Can you hear me? Hi everyone. My name is Peter Wiles. This is to check if you're in the right place. This is the courage to be a professional software developer. I want to start by thanking you for spending time listening to my talk. It is a privilege to give it. So I hope that it's beneficial for you. On the 25th of August 2017, James Liang, a software developer at VW, was sentenced by a US court to 40 months in prison and a $200,000 fine. The charge, fraud and violation of the Environmental Protection Agency's Clean Air Act. You may know the story. The EPA had found that VW's diesel cars from the mid-2000s had within them, in their software, what they called a defeat device, which essentially switched the car into test mode in which emissions were massively reduced. But in real driving mode, the emissions, the noxious vapor emissions coming from the cars was 10 times above the EPA's stipulations. Interestingly, VW's leadership denied all wrongdoing and said it was rogue software engineers. It was all their fault. And since then, some of their execs have been indicted, and they're on trial. But it's interesting to me that the first person criminally charged, he did cooperate with the investigation and pleaded guilty. He was actually a coder, an engineer, who wrote the code that had that if statement that switched it into test mode. You might have been following. Just last week, Uber had a PR issue where one of their cars killed a pedestrian. Uber says, well, there was a self-driving car that had killed this pedestrian. They had a driver in there, not a hands-off driver, who said the pedestrian suddenly appeared and nothing could have been done. 2 days ago, Google said their car wouldn't have done that. So it's very interesting now. If the car was negligent, then who is to blame? If it was a person who was negligent, they would go through the courts and some judgment would be found against the person. But who is to blame in the case that it's the software at fault? Is it a subsystem? Is it a bug? And if it is a bug, should we use git blame to figure out who the person is? I think these are difficult questions that I think as software becomes more and more prevalent or more controls our daily life, if you bring it to South Africa where, just in our governmental systems in the last 10, 20 years, we've moved almost everything to electronic. Home affairs, our municipalities. In fact, one municipality, I won't mention which one, they had a system where if you changed the URL, you could see other people's accounts, including all their personal, their address and telephone numbers. That system was taken down. But it does highlight the fact that it is important that as software developers we are building systems that are, when they have people's lives in their hands, that they are good. That we build them ethically and that we build them in a professional manner. So I think we need to stop and think about what it means to be a professional in software development. So obviously, from these examples you can see, it's not simply exchanging or writing code in exchange for money. And we had another example recently with sport. It's not simply playing cricket for money. There's a lot more expected of you when you are being a professional sportsman than simply being paid to play cricket. You need to follow the rules of the game, not cheat, not try and circumvent things. So at Chillisoft, we've been discussing what this means over the past few years, and we've taken it to the point where we have started up what we call a school of professional software development, where we try and tackle some of these things with developers. The core of this school, DevFluence, is courage. Not that. The core is having the courage to create value for customers, myself, and my community. That's what we see as kind of one of the core values of being a professional software developer. So I want to talk a bit about courage, and then what it means to create value for customers, myself, and my community in this talk. So to start with, courage. So courage, and I'll start with a bit definition. It's the choice to pursue the goal of pragmatic value that's aligned to my values ahead of fears, convenience, or short-term gain. So, for example, it's to be deliberate and transparent in the face of looming deadlines or pressure, not hiding things. It's to speak up or to listen, or willing to listen to others and willing to be corrected, being humble. It's the courage to act and take ownership and accountability for our own learning, our own career, our own quality, our own deliverables, and to do the right thing, even if it's inconvenient or difficult. To see what's needed and try to meet that need with all your available energy. This is something that has informed why we're doing DevFluence. We've seen the need for growing skills in software development, and we're pursuing that with all our available energy. So notice how those examples that I mentioned now are about how we act, and not about how we speak or what we know. Of course, knowledge is important. We have to know technical things as developers, and that's actually key to be a professional. But acting with courage, backed up by our technical knowledge, is what I think makes you a professional. One of the key words in this concept is this word here, choice. And I would also qualify that with an adjective, deliberate choice. We shouldn't simply go with the flow of what's happening around us, the hype. We should be deliberate in choosing our path and then following through on that. So a quick note about fear. Courage does not mean being fearless. It means confronting fears and, in spite of them, pursuing the path chosen that's aligned to our values. So in 2013, Chillisoft had an opportunity to do some work in Oman. This opportunity presented itself. We were referred to a potential customer, and I thought it was pretty much impossible for us to do that. How do you bridge such different cultures? How do you work in a foreign country? How's it even possible given all our family commitments, and how do we get developers to be there? But we did pursue it. This was because I was told to, essentially. I didn't really have the choice. My boss told me to do it. So despite my fears, I went and did it. And the reason she did that was because she could see that it would provide a huge amount of value for our company, despite the risks and challenges. So ultimately, the decision to actually try, we ended up doing a few projects there, and ultimately having a team there for a whole year. It created a lot more ability within our organization, a lot more confidence, a lot more credibility, and experience. And yeah, there was a bit of money involved as well, which was also part of it. So I'll be first to say that was a really difficult experience, but it was something that really grew us as a company and as a team. So that's a brief sort of overview of what I think courage as a developer is. So I want to talk about value for customers, and value for myself, and value for community, and how that works. So to start with, obviously, if we're a professional software developer, or software developer being paid by someone, we need to provide value, economic value, for that customer. It is basic economics. If you're paid 10,000 Rand a month, you need to be creating more than 10,000 Rand a month economic value over the long term. It doesn't mean every month, but over the long term, that should be the case. That's kind of a given. We have to be providing value for our customers who are paying for our services. But what I think is important is we need to ensure that we are learning our base level skills and that we're doing that on our own time as much as possible, not on our customers' time. So what I mean by that is core language, libraries, techniques, technologies, domains. Domains being things like security, logging, those sorts of technical domains. Languages, obviously we're not going to know all the languages. There's new ones born every day. We're going to know just the ones that we've chosen to focus on and keep learning them. So to take an example from another profession, engineering, and yes, the metaphor is not quite perfect, but a civil engineer knows their soils, they know their rocks, they know the geology of South Africa, generally. They'll know their materials, their concrete, their steel. So if they come to build a bridge, the things that they bring their materials and their knowledge with them, the things they have to learn are the specific lay of that land, the specific soils in play, and kind of how they're going to build that bridge. And I think it's similar for software developers, that we need to know these core things, these core techniques, core materials. We need to understand them so that we can bring our energy to bear on the problem at hand. So things that I think we can be paid to learn, new business domains, potentially, specific technologies. Sometimes a project has a technology that's not mainstream, and you shouldn't really be expected to have known it already. The problem itself, obviously we're not going to know the problem itself in advance, and we can learn how to apply our knowledge to solve these new problems. And I think one of the things of having courage is the courage to say, actually, we don't know this thing. We don't know how this technology works. We need to learn it. And is the customer willing to pay for us to do that? I think the key here is that we need to be continuously learning, not relying on the job training. As much as that is very valuable, and I think should still be provided if companies are to get the best out of their developers, it's really incumbent on us as developers to be doing that for ourselves as well. And I think also what's important is to figure out what are the things that I don't yet know. Do I understand security, the basics of security? Do I understand the basics of the building blocks I need? Do I understand architecture and the basics that I need for that? And if we don't, to find that information, I'll find out where to get it. Another part of providing value for customers is not choosing technology that is good for our CV, but choosing technology that fits our customer's business and fits the problem at hand. Providing our customer with solid decision-making data points, and this is something that I think there's a lot of room for growth in software development, understanding the economic value of what we're building, and understanding how that impacts on our customers, and helping them make choices between different things or the different features that they could build. Also, ensuring the value that we're providing will survive after we're gone. I think that is key to being a professional. We need to make sure that we're writing code that is readable by others, that has unit tests, that in the work that we're doing, we're passing on knowledge to others. I think those things are all part of providing value to customers, long-term sustainable value to customers. And sometimes this means being uncomfortable and doing things you don't want to do. I mentioned our project in Oman where we actually went and lived there, or lots of trips away from family. That was required because the value that they needed was to cross-skill their developers. So that was a requirement for the project. It wasn't comfortable for them either because they had to deal with some fairly crazy South Africans. But that was actually what they were asking for, to be disrupted in the way that they were doing their software development. So the reason we're even able to create software at all is that there's a customer willing to pay us. This is, I guess, fairly obvious. We need to ensure we're creating value for that customer. The second part of creating value over the long term is creating value for myself. I think this, if we're going to ensure our ability to create value for our customers, we need to be making sure that we are working towards ensuring our long-term or future earning potential and our character growth. So I'll give a short story about my own career. I started at NBS Bank. You may remember them. They were infamous for the come and get your slice commercials. It was way back in the 90s. Well, I started in 2000 there, and I joined a team there that created software that was a really good piece of software for their corporate customers. I really enjoyed it. We wrote a Forex module, we wrote a reporting engine, and I felt I was really creating value for their customers. For 3 years, I was on a team that was incredibly supportive, always trying to learn. They were trying to do Agile in the year 2000, 3-monthly release cycles. It was a really good place to start working. And the more I think back on it as I've grown older, the more I've realized that was an incredibly good first job experience. And so I found a lot of value for myself for those 3 years. At some point, changes took place. Nedbank bought NBS, and Nedbank had a similar product. So that product was the future product, was going forward, and our product was going to get decommissioned. So working on this product wasn't creating the same value as it was. Also, I was working in a 4GL called Forte, and .NET and Java were the places to be in the early 2000s. So I felt I wasn't creating value for myself in that my skills were not something that could be marketed in the future. Also, Nedbank, to their credit, said that they would find a place for me within their company. But I wanted to stay in Durban, and that was also creating value for myself, living in a, let's say, warmer place. I don't know. More humid place, at least. And so you can see that at some point, about 3.5 years into that job, my sense of value that I was creating for customers and myself had diminished. So I moved and joined a company in Pietermaritzburg, slightly less humid, much hotter. And there was a small company that did bespoke software for customers, including KZN, Department of Health, and companies and organizations within Pietermaritzburg. Now I was the developer, who visited the customer, installed the software, extracted requirements, did the user training, wrote the code as well, planned the release, the whole sequence. Yes, there were small projects, but I felt I was getting a lot of value out of learning about that entire sequence. My first few pieces of software were not particularly successful doing that. Ultimately, they worked, but I could see that if I was a better developer, I could have done a much better job of creating value for my customer. My contribution was meaningful, and I was improving at being able to create the right solution and combining knowledge of tech and knowledge of business. To join that company, I had taken a 30% pay cut, and later on, 18 months later, with Anuja, who was the founder of that company, Core Business Solutions, we started Chillisoft, and I took another pay cut at that point. And that was okay. It took me about 5 years to get back to where I was in terms of salary, but it was far better in the long run. And if I want to stress anything today, it's that your career is a long time, 40, 50 years. The long term is what we should be optimizing for. and not short-term gain. So I can't stress that enough. Are you currently investing in your long-term growth? Perhaps you're in a place that pays well. Are you investing in that growth? That's not a bad thing to be paid well, as long as there's still a future earning potential for you, and you're still getting value from that. Now, I want to also stress, it is certainly the case that that value could simply be being paid and being able to support your family and being able to support your children through school. That is an immense value to be gained. But remember to kind of reframe that. If you're not gaining immense learning and growth in your career or your job at the moment, reframe that to be like, okay, well, I'm not gaining this, but I am able to provide my children good schooling, or whatever it is that you need for yourself, so that you still see that job as valuable for yourself. Remember that it's your responsibility to manage your career, or your growth, not your employers, although hopefully they are, and they're helping to do that, but it is your responsibility to do it. Ultimately, you're accountable to yourself for what you are able to do and what you're able to earn through doing that. Okay, so we're creating value for customers, for ourselves, but what about our community? And I think this flows out of creating value. If we are able to create value for customers and ourselves, creating value for our community flows out. Even if it's simply being able to do a job where we earn a decent salary and support our community, being our family, our extended family. There's obviously many more ways that we create value for community. One of them is the impact our software has. You may have, I'll give you one example. Well, there's many examples. We all, I assume, use e-filing or some form of it to pay our taxes, if we pay our taxes. So I would say that software has had a big impact on our country, and certainly on my life. It's unbelievable, 5 minutes or something to do my return, whereas it used to consist of masses of paper and postage and a lot of pain. At Chillisoft, we write software that's usually more back-end. You won't notice it often, but it still has an impact. The software we write has an impact on the community, either on our users. Always, the software should have an impact on our users' lives, or on the business that the user is in. At Chillisoft, we've written things like a medicine dispensing system that helped at ARV clinics to reduce queue lengths. We've written software that helps businesses to run their business and be more efficient. Just plain and simple as that. That has an impact on that business and on that community that's earning, paying their people salaries to be in that business. So the software we write has an impact on our community, but obviously there's a lot more than that. If you're not working on a project or a system that you think has like a great value to society, there's still value in the work you're doing with your team. That those team members are learning together. Those team members will, in the future, go somewhere else and build new software. And that software could have a big impact. So you never know how much impact the work you're doing with your colleagues or your team members is going to have. So it's important that we invest in those, in sharing skills with our team members, sharing our knowledge with each other, and learning from each other. We can also pass our skills on, share our knowledge through user groups and speaking at conferences, or just attending user groups and being a part of the conversation. That's creating value in the community, because events like this allow people to share ideas and learn from each other. So I would say if we want to create value for our community, and I think we all need a sense of meaning in what we do. and creating value for our community is certainly for me is a large part of the meaning that I kind of make out of what I do. And I think this is essential, to focus on gaining the experience you need to make the impact you want to make on your community. Again, over the long term. Maybe this is simply supporting your family and your extended family, as I said. Maybe it's in gaining skills and passing them on. Maybe it's more intense local learning initiatives or other forms of contribution to community. So we believe that it's the duty of a professional to be involved in some way with your community, somehow. As you build skills, you build agency, which is just simply power to act in the world. And remember that with power comes responsibility, like Spider-Man told us. This is a really, I think, a true thing that we learn from Marvel. There's not much that you learn that's true from Marvel, but that is certainly one of them. So I would say that is true, that with power comes responsibility. As we have more agency in the world, it is incumbent on us to use that agency for good. It's not only about what we can get out. Besides, it is rewarding to do that. It is rewarding to help. It is rewarding to share knowledge and build skills. So it's this community focus that led us at Chillisoft. So we've been creating value for our customers now with 13 years. The company has been going. We've been creating value for ourselves. We enjoy working. We enjoy working at Chillisoft almost all the time. There's always difficult things and challenges that happen, but we enjoy it. We get a lot of value out of that learning that we do together. And now, and something that's always been in our hearts is to create value for community and to share that knowledge. And it's one of the reasons we do talks at conferences and things like that. So we've created a developer-focused brand which does training and that sort of thing. And I'll explain a little bit about what we're trying to do there, very briefly. We want to spread the message of this courage to be professional. You can see it on my shirt as well. So we want to do that in practical ways. Things like short courses that try to teach habits and fundamentals that are useful for all developers. So technically focused, but trying to instill the mindset of professionalism within those courses. We run a school for graduate developers in Durban. Graduates employed by other companies, sort of like a learnership program where we try to get their careers off to a solid start by instilling this ethos of professionalism, helping them to grow their career, helping them hopefully to mentor them after they've been through this program, through their career. And we facilitate deliberate practice programs which really just help companies' teams to become better at learning together. And the reason we do this is because we want software development to mature further. We see how important it is in the world today, and we want the craft or the practice to mature further. We see the need in South Africa for good skills and for sustainable skills built into people that are rooted in this country. And that's, I think, really important if we want to build a sustainable software development ecosystem. So come and speak to me afterwards at our stand if you're interested in anything about that. But I want to end briefly with going back to courage and trying to give you some kind of practical examples of how it might be that you could be courageous in your career or in your situation. So you may need to search yourself to find what are your values and what is the thing that you're going to chase after. You'll need to fight against going with the flow wherever your career takes you by default. So find what your values are and pursue those with intention, with deliberateness. When you do this, sometimes things won't work. Courage is the ability to continue in the face of that failure. And when that project is going south, stick it out. Those times are the best learning times. Don't bail. Work through those failures and learn from them, because you won't want them to happen again. And the only way you prevent them from happening again is to work through them and come out the other side. You may need to, in your workplace, as much as you can, insist on practices and principles that you know to be good practice, and that allow you to do your best work. You may need to find a place where you flourish, find people that you flourish with, and you may need to take a pay cut to do that. Remember that it's about the long term. It's not about what you're able to do today or what you're able to earn today. You may need to start your own business. That's an act of immense courage. And I know some of you here have your own businesses, and they can probably tell you stories about the challenges and the fears that they've had in doing that. And I think, but the value that they're creating in the world, I think is invaluable. You may need to work in a job that's unfulfilling to support your family. I mentioned that. To get experience under your belt. You just remember to do that actively, to reframe it, and to understand why you're doing it. Don't just go with the flow and do it because you've always been doing it. You may need to start up a user group, join a user group within your company or in the local area. There's lots here in Johannesburg. You may need to study part-time to empower yourself to take on that dream job. You may need to seek others who are like-minded to find your courage and your inspiration. And I think that's something that is really important if you want to find that, to find other people that you're able to connect with who think similarly to you, so that you can get inspiration from that and overcome those fears. So I want to end with just encouraging you to say that I hope you're able to find that courage to build your career as a software developer over the long term and to contribute to our profession meaningfully. And I wish you all the best in doing that. And thank you. That's it from my presentation. If you have any questions or anything you'd like to ask, you're welcome to put up your hand. There's about 10 minutes. Yes?
Another question. Did you work for NBS?
Yes.
The ad was a customer sitting on a chair, and the bottom line was the man with the big banana holding a banana.
Really? The one people remember is the parrot that went, yes, yes, NBS. Yeah. That's at least the one I remember the best. Oh no, I wasn't. And I wouldn't have got the bit about the banana either. Anyone else? Any comments or suggestions? Yes. Yes. Mandla, how's it? Yes.
And I think you picked courage.
Yeah.
Why is courage so important? Why not feedback? Why not the other ways? I mean, I understand why, but like, just
From my perspective. Yeah. That's,
the first question. The second question is, you say you're only focusing on graduates. What's the intent? What's the thinking behind that?
on?
On your, you may be running a course where you
Oh, okay. Yeah.
graduate up to speed.
Yes.
What about the wider community? You just focus on graduates. I'm sure there's a reason behind it.
Yeah. Okay, so on courage, I think because courage, so I mean, the values that we've chosen have been are focused on the individual. Okay, feedback is something that you need to build into your systems, but you can't build courage easily into your systems. Courage needs to come from you. So if you're going to be a professional developer, you need to have that ethos of having the courage to be professional. That's why I think courage is a key one. Kempbeck's book that you mentioned, that's Extreme Programming Explained. Excellent book. And his values are really well worth digging into as well. But our courage is just more individual focused, and that's why we go on that. And then the second one, so I mentioned creating value for your community, and I think we all can identify things that we can do in what we, in the tools and skills that we have, and the way that we can see how we can make a difference. I know you're doing something really great in DeepSlurt, the coding ground, and that's doing that exact thing, building skill and community. So we kind of see, we already have strong skills in training young people. So we've done that quite a lot through the years, over the 13 years, hired people, train them, and they grow in their skill set. We haven't got experience in pre-graduate level doing that. So we're taking what skills we're good at and applying those into where we see that we can add value, essentially. Yeah, cool. There was another one. The back, anyone? Okay, Joshua. Meetup.com. There's the developer user group, which kind of, this is a spin-off of. It's bigger now than the developer user group, but that's something that they meet once a month I think it's still at Microsoft offices in Bryanston. You can go on Meetup and look for that. There's also a Pretoria one. There's Scrum. Do you have, I don't live in Johannesburg, so I don't actually, I use the Meetup stuff in Durban. I can tell you all about the Durban ones if that's interesting, but ask Joshua where to go. He's the guy at the back. But the developer user group is a great place to start. Yes. Okay. How's it? Go for it.
You mentioned pay cuts. That's very disturbing.
I said you may have to. You may have to.
It's more like a personal question, but
Yeah.
At what stage in your career did you have to take that courage to take a 30% pay cut? Were you having a family or?
No. And that's why I said no. That's why I said, look, I wouldn't have made that choice if I did have a family. No way. So it's not like this is what everyone should do. This is just something that I chose to do because I could. I had saved money because I was single, so I could actually live off less because I had savings. So not everyone can do it. So, and I'm not saying go and do it and jeopardize your family's well-being. That is definitely not what I'm saying. So yeah. Any other questions? Cool. Thanks very much for your time, everyone.